The Biden administration recently questioned, really during a White House press briefing, its role in the border crisis. And the response on this was interesting. Watch this.
When it comes to illegal migration, you've seen it come down by more than 90%, and that's because of the actions that this president has taken.
You get that? Does that mean the border crisis is done? Is it over? Well, not according to the official numbers. In fact, last fiscal year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they recorded the highest number of illegal border crossings ever. They stopped illegal aliens and migrants over 2.3 million times. That's a 37% increase in the 1.7 million apprehensions 1 year before. And this year, folks, well, is it lower? No. The numbers are even higher. In March, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they recorded a 25% increase from what was already the highest numbers ever. That does not sound like a more than 90% decrease, as the White House says, does it? And now with Title 42 ending, actually it's getting even worse. Then, was it Trump? Was he the problem? Some people are saying that. Is he the one who ruined the standards in the border and destabilized the whole thing? Well, not according to the corporate media, if you look at what they were saying back in the time. When Trump claimed there was a border crisis in 2019, right before he left office, the editorial board of the Washington Post declared Trump's make-believe crisis is untethered from truth and reality. Trump's make-believe crisis, you getting that? The New York Times even published a fact check on Trump, declaring that his claims that a border crisis existed, they said it was, again, he said it was an urgent national crisis. They said it was fake. They said it was false. So what changed then between 2019 and now? How is the White House saying the numbers are down? Well, on the surface, none of it lines up, let's be honest. But you peel back that facade, it's all going to make sense. I'll show you this. It seems the White House is using a very clever play on words. They're specifically saying illegal migration is down, but they differentiate illegal migration from amnesty and migration. You get that? And as for the numbers and the focus on non-illegal migration, well, it turns out, interestingly, folks, the government is facilitating it. The government has been facilitating massive human trafficking being run through the border. And I'm not just saying that. A recent grand jury in Florida determined this. This includes serious allegations, in their own words, in fact, of the government aiding and abetting child trafficking. Let me explain. On March 30th, the Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, she published on her official website this: grand jury releases shocking report. She points to a 142-page document from the Supreme Court of Florida, and it details the terrible reality of these unaccompanied minors, these unaccompanied children we always hear about, you know? It turns out, folks, many of these unaccompanied children we keep hearing about, they're being abused and trafficked. And worse, it turns out the federal government is directly involved, and your tax dollars are what's financing it. The Supreme Court of Florida notes it in 2021, one example of this. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, they lost contact with close to 20,000 unaccompanied alien children. It cites multiple examples of the agency placing children, these unaccompanied minors, in the homes of unknown men with no private bedrooms. Where are the kids staying? They sharing a room with these unknown men? And notes the Department of Health and Human Services and the Justice Department, it says they received thousands of allegations of sexual abuse. It includes cases of children being forced into prostitution. The report details how, despite these horrifying facts, the Office of Refugee Resettlement actually discourages any checks on the addresses where the children are being sent. But they find that in Jacksonville, Florida, where they actually looked into it, some of these addresses where these children are being sent to these unknown men, they include strip clubs. They include open fields. They include, this is an exact quote, they include empty lots surrounded by stacked shipping containers. And in many cases, the people receiving these kids, they have disturbing profiles. This report from the Supreme Court in Florida details how the government does not require criminal background checks on the men they're handing these kids to. It says in some cases they were former prisoners, including with a history of child abuse. The Florida grand jury also found a disturbing pattern with these sponsors applying to receive multiple trafficked children. One example, one address in Texas had 44 of these children in a single residence. It was common for sponsors to receive more than 4 of the kids. The list of disturbing findings goes on and on. And what's interesting now, similar claims are being now brought to Congress. Tarlead Rodas, a Department of Health and Human Services whistleblower, actually stepped forward. She recently testified before the House Judiciary Committee, and she said the U.S. government is, the quote she says in her own words, the middleman in a multi-billion-dollar migrant trafficking operation. Watch this.
My goal is to inspire action to safeguard the lives of migrant children, including the staggering 85,000 that are missing. Today, children will work overnight shifts at slaughterhouses, factories, restaurants to pay their debts to smugglers and traffickers. Today, children will be sold for sex. And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021 when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children. Realizing that we were not offering the children the American dream, but instead putting them in modern-day slavery with wicked overlords was a terrible revelation.